Umrah. First, the ihram should be put on with the intention of doing Umrah. Those coming from outside Mecca should put on the ihram from their respective miqat. Locals, whether they are Meccans or are temporarily residing in Mecca, should put it on from some nearby place located outside the limits of the Haram. And those who live outside the limits of Haram but are located within the miqat, their miqat is the place of their residence. They can put on the ihram from their homes and begin reciting the talbiyah. The recital of the talbiyah should continue till a pilgrim reaches the Baytullah. Once he arrives there, he should offer the tawaf of the Baytullah. Then the sa'i should be offered. If the animals of Hadi accompany a pilgrim, they should then be sacrificed. After sacrifice, men should shave their heads or have a haircut, and women should cut a small tuft from the end of their hair and then take off their ihram. The ihram is a religious term. It signifies that pilgrims will not indulge in lewd talk, they will not use any adornments, for example perfume, they will not pare their nails, nor shave or cut any body hair, they will not even remove any dirt or filth from them, so much so, they will not even kill any lice of their body. They will not hunt prayers, nor wear stitched cloth. They will expose their heads, faces, and the upper part of their feet. They will wear one sheet as loincloth and enfold another around themselves. Women, however, can either wear stitched clothes and cover their heads and feet. They are only required to expose their hands and faces. The talbiyah implies the constant recital of these words. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, innal hamda wal ni'mata lak wal mulk la sharika lak. It begins right after putting on the ihram and continues till a person reaches the Baytullah. This is the only recital which the Almighty has prescribed for Hajj and Umrah. The tawaf refers to the 7 rounds which are made round the Baytullah in a state of ceremonial cleanliness. Each of these rounds begin with the Hajar-e-Aswad and ends with it, and the istilam of the Hajar-e-Aswad is done at the beginning of each round. It means kissing the Hajar-e-Aswad or touching it with the hands and then kissing the hands. If the place is crowded, a pilgrim can just raise his hand in its direction or even point a stick or something similar towards it. The sa'i refers to the tawaf of the Safa and Marwa. This also consists of 7 rounds which begin with Safa. A complete round extends from Safa to Marwa, and the last round ends on Marwa. Like animal sacrifice, the sa'i between the Safa and Marwa is optional. It is not an essential part of the Umrah. The Almighty says in the Quran, Inna as-Safa wal Marwata min sha'airillah, faman hajja al-bayta aw i'tamara fala junaha alayhi an yattawafa bihima, وَمَنْ تَتَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ شَاكِرٌ عَلِيمٌ. The Safa and Marwa are indeed 2 of God's symbols. So it shall be no offense for those who come for Hajj or Umrah of this sacred house to walk around them. In fact, this is a virtuous deed. And he who does a virtue of his own will, God will accept it and is fully aware of it. Surah number 2, verse 158. The hadi refers to the animals which have been specifically reserved to be sacrificed in the haram. In order to make them distinct from other animals, their bodies are marked and collars are tied around their necks. For this very reason, the Quran uses the word al-qala'id for them. Hajj. Like the Umrah, the Hajj too begins with the ihram. Consequently, the first thing that a pilgrim must do is to put on the ihram with the intention of offering Hajj. Those coming from outside Mecca should put on the ihram from their respective miqat. Locals, whether they are Meccans or are temporarily residing in Mecca or living outside the limits of the Haram but are located within the miqat, should put it on at their place of residence. This is their miqat. They can put on the ihram from their homes and begin reciting the talbiyah. Pilgrims should go to Mina on the 8th of Zul-Hajj and reside there. They should go to Arafat on the 9th of Zul-Hajj. At Arafat, the Imam shall deliver the sermon before the Zuhr prayer, and the prayers of Zuhr and Asr shall be offered by combining and shortening them. After the prayer, pilgrims should celebrate the glory of their Lord and express their gratitude to Him, express His exaltedness and oneness, and invoke and beseech Him as much as they can. They should set off for Muzdalifah after sunset. After arriving at Muzdalifah, the pilgrims should offer the prayers of Maghrib and Isha by combining and shortening them. The night must be spent on the field of Muzdalifah. After the Fajr prayer, the pilgrims for some time should celebrate the glory of their Lord and express their gratitude to Him, express His exaltedness and oneness, and invoke and beseech Him, just as they did at Arafat. Then they should leave for Mina, and once they reach the Jamra Aqaba, they should stop reciting the Talbiyah and pelt this Jamra with 7 stones. If the pilgrims have brought forth the Hadi, or if it has become incumbent upon them to sacrifice animals which have been devoted, or which are a means of atonement, then these should be sacrificed. After sacrifice, men should shave their heads or have a haircut, and women should cut a small tuft from the end of their hair and then take off their ihram. After that, the pilgrims should set off for the Baytullah and offer the tawaf. With this, all restrictions which the ihram entail shall be lifted. After that, if a pilgrim wants, he can offer the sa'i of the Safa and the Marwa, though this is optional. Then they should go back to Mina and stay there for 2 or 3 days, and then every day pelt first the first Jamra, then the middle one, and then the last one with 7 stones each. Ever since the times of Abraham, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, these are the rites or manasik of Hajj and Umrah. The Quran has made no change in them. It has only explained certain issues which arose at that time, issues about which there was no clear directive given previously. These issues are 6 in number. The first of them is that showing reverence to whatever has been declared sacred by the Almighty regarding Hajj and Umrah is a requirement of faith. This should be expressed and followed at all costs. If some other group violates this sanctity, Muslims too have the right to retaliate on equal footings. The reason is that keeping intact the sanctities ordained by the Almighty is a two-way practice. One member of the pact cannot just maintain it on its own. The Almighty says, "Ash-shahrul haramu bi-shahril haram wal-hurumatu qisas. فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ." A sacred month for a sacred month. Similarly, other things too are subject to retaliation. So if anyone transgresses against you, you should also pay back in equal coins. Have fear of God and keep in mind that God is with those who remain within the bounds stipulated by religion. Surah number 2, verse 194. While explaining this verse, Imam Amin Ahsan Islahi writes, "This verse implies that fighting in the forbidden months or fighting within the boundaries of the Haram is a big sin. However, if the disbelievers disregard their sanctity, Muslims on account of qisas also have the right to strip them of the protection that these sacred entities afford them. The life of every person carries great sanctity in the eyes of the Shariah. However, when a person violates this sanctity and kills someone, then he himself will be deprived of the right of sanctity of his own life to avenge his own deed. Similarly, the sanctity of the forbidden months and of the Haram itself shall be upheld in all circumstances on the condition that disbelievers also uphold it and do not oppress and tyrannize people during this time. However, if they unsheath their swords in the forbidden months and in the sacred land of Mecca, then on account of qisas, they themselves deserve to be divested of the protection these months and this land hold for them." The verse goes on to say that just as the taking of qisas for the forbidden months is necessary, the qisas of other sacred entities must also be taken. In other words, if the disbelievers deprive Muslims of the right of protection that certain sacred things hold for them, Muslims too have the right as a result of qisas to pay them back in equal coins or measure. Amin Ahsan Islahi, Tadabbur-e-Quran, Volume 1, page 479. Secondly, in spite of the permission for war, Muslims cannot take any initiative in violating the sanctities. These are the sanctities ordained by God, and taking the initiative in violating them is a grave sin. In no circumstances should this happen. An attack on the sacred house is an attack on the house of God. Harming the animals which are marked for sacrifice to God and the people who have traveled to seek the bounty and pleasure of their Lord is like going after God. Hence, even animosity towards a nation should not lead Muslims to violate the limits in this regard. It should remain clear to them that the Almighty is stern in retribution for those who break promises and covenants, promises which He had made with people as a favor and as a means to grant them dominance. The Quran says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تحلوا شعائر الله ولا الشهر الحرام ولا الهدي ولا القلائد ولا آمين البيت الحرام يبتغون فضلا من ربهم ورضوانا ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم أن صدوكم عن مسجد الحرام أن تعتدوا وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان واتقوا الله إن الله شديد العقاب. Believers, do not violate the symbols of God or the sacred months or the animals of Hajj, or specifically those among them which are marked with collars of vow, or those who have set out for this house to seek God's grace and pleasure. And if some people had stopped you from coming to the sacred house, your animosity against them should not incite you so much that you cross the limits of the Almighty. No, you must abide by these limits and help one another in what is virtuous and pious, and not in what is sinful and oppressive. And have fear of God, because God is stern in retribution. Surah number 5, verse 2. The Quran also says, جعل الله الكعبة البيت الحرام قياما للناس والشهر الحرام ولا الهدي ولا القلائد ذلك لتعلموا أن الله يعلم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وأن الله بكل شيء عليم اعلموا أن الله شديد العقاب وأن الله غفور رحيم. God has made the Kaaba, the sacred house, a center for the people, and the sacred months and the sacrificial animals, and especially among the animals which as symbols are adorned with collars of vow. This is because you may know God has knowledge of all that is in the heavens and the earth, and God is aware of everything. Be aware that God is stern in retribution, and that God is forgiving and merciful. The third